It was a quiet Thursday afternoon, the kind of stillness that feels almost staged, like the calm before a storm. The wind whispered against the windows, sunlight streaking through gauzy curtains, painting golden lines across the floor. Inside the house, everything was just as it should be. The dishwasher hummed in the background, the scent of lavender from a diffuser floated lazily through the air, and Jenna, 6 months pregnant, sat with her swollen feet propped up on a pillow, reading through baby name lists on her phone. She had just started to drift into a gentle post-lunch haze when the doorbell rang. At first, she didn't react. Who visits at this hour? Her friends knew she needed rest. Maybe it was a package, or a neighbor needing something. She groaned softly, her belly making the motion of standing awkward and slow, and padded toward the front door. Her bare feet touched cool tile. The bell rang again, insistent this time. Jenna opened the door, and everything stopped. There, standing just a few feet away, was a woman she had never seen before. But it wasn't the woman's face that sent Jenna's heart into a tailspin. It was what she was holding. In one arm, she carried a small baby, barely a few months old. In the other, a manila folder thick with papers. Her eyes were sharp, tired, and filled with something between fury and pity. "Are you Jenna?" she asked, voice firm. Jenna's mouth went dry. Her hand instinctively drifted to her belly, as if to shield the baby within. Behind those few simple words, a dam was about to break. She had no idea that what she was about to hear would unravel everything she thought she knew about her husband and her marriage. This was the moment everything changed. Jenna had always dreamed of becoming a mother. Even as a little girl, she would wrap her dolls in old baby blankets and cradle them with a kind of tenderness that made the adults around her smile knowingly. She grew up in a small town in Ohio, where family was everything and life moved just slow enough to save her. By the time she reached her late 20s, she had her career as a graphic designer well underway, a small but loyal circle of friends, and a heart that was ready, aching, even, to build something real, something lasting. That's when she met Alex. It was at a mutual friend's wedding. He was tall, well-spoken, with a smile that could disarm any room. He'd flown in from New York, where he worked in finance, and seemed every bit the part of the charming outsider. Polished, composed, just a little mysterious. Their first conversation felt effortless. Within minutes, they were laughing over champagne, exchanging numbers, and staying up that night texting about everything from childhood memories to career goals. It felt like fate. By the end of that month, he had already flown back to see her. By the end of that year, they were engaged. Alex was the kind of man who knew how to make a woman feel seen. He complimented Jenna constantly, not just on how she looked, but on who she was. He praised her creativity, her kindness, her laugh. He bought her thoughtful gifts, booked surprise getaways, and remembered the names of her coworkers and her favorite type of tea. He was attentive without being overbearing, affectionate without being cloying. To anyone looking in, he was the ideal husband. And for a while, Jenna believed it, too. They married in the spring, an outdoor ceremony, full of blooming lilacs and handwritten vows that made everyone cry. After the wedding, they moved into a modest but stylish home in the suburbs, halfway between Jenna's small-town roots and the city Alex commuted to. Soon after, they started trying for a baby. When Jenna found out she was pregnant, Alex seemed thrilled. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around the kitchen, even though she squealed and begged him to put her down before she got dizzy. He took her to every prenatal appointment he could make, read baby books out loud at night, and built the crib with meticulous care. Jenna often caught him staring at her belly with a faraway look in his eyes, a mix of awe and disbelief. It all seemed perfect. Too perfect. But perfection has a way of masking what lies beneath. There were small things at first. Jenna noticed that Alex would sometimes go oddly quiet when his phone buzzed. He claimed it was just work, markets didn't sleep after all, but he started taking more last-minute meetings, staying later at the office, even when Jenna had cooked or had a doctor's appointment. Once, she found a receipt for a dinner he never mentioned, 2 entrees, 2 drinks, late at night. He brushed it off, said it was with a client, and she let it go. Another time, she smelled a different perfume on his shirt. A colleague hugged me at work, he said with a laugh. You're being paranoid, babe. Jenna didn't want to be that wife, the one who accused, doubted, questioned. So she buried those instincts. She reminded herself that Alex loved her. That he wanted this baby as much as she did. That he had never given her a real reason not to trust him. Still, something in her had started to shift. There were moments, quiet ones, when she'd catch herself staring at him and wondering if he was entirely who he claimed to be. She'd shake the thought away, blaming hormones or stress. But the unease lingered, like a tiny crack in a windshield, barely noticeable at first, but growing, spreading, waiting for the right impact to shatter everything. The third trimester loomed closer, and Jenna found herself slipping into the rhythms of pregnancy like it was second nature. She had developed a routine that revolved around her growing belly, early morning walks through the neighborhood, long afternoon naps, prenatal yoga videos, and careful meal prepping that made her feel in control, even when her body seemed to be doing its own thing. Nesting instincts kicked in full force. She spent hours online comparing crib sheets, researching baby monitors, and organizing the nursery closet until everything was folded and sorted by size and color. But even as she folded tiny onesies and hung pastel mobiles above the crib, a dull ache had started to take shape, an emotional heaviness that wouldn't quite go away. Alex had always been busy with work. That wasn't new. But recently, his absences felt different. It wasn't just the time, it was the energy. He used to come home tired but present, still willing to talk about their day, still making an effort to connect. Lately, he barely made it through the door before he was on his phone or disappearing into his home office for a few emails. He no longer lingered at the dinner table or offered to rub her feet like he used to. Jenna tried to tell herself it was just stress. He'd taken on new clients, the economy was unstable, and they were preparing to become parents. But deep down, she knew better. There were other signs too. The way he jumped slightly when his phone rang. How he'd casually turn the screen away when she was nearby. One night, around 11:30 p.m., Jenna woke up alone in bed. She padded downstairs and found him whispering on the phone in the dark kitchen. He ended the call the second he saw her. Said it was a client with a crisis in Asia. She wanted to believe him. She smiled, kissed his cheek, and went back upstairs. But her stomach had knotted in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Her intuition, that quiet voice she'd been ignoring, started to speak louder. Still, she kept moving forward. She wanted this baby to come into a world that was warm and whole. She immersed herself in parenting blogs, kept a pregnancy journal, and even started recording weekly video diaries for her future child. Today, you kicked for the first time, she whispered into her phone one evening, lying on the nursery rug. Your daddy wasn't here, but I'll tell him later. Maybe we'll both laugh about it someday. The words caught in her throat before she could finish. During brunch with her best friend Emily one weekend, Jenna let something slip. Nothing dramatic, just a casual mention of how late Alex had been coming home. Emily paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. You sure he's just working? She asked gently, not judgmental, just cautious. Jenna laughed it off, brushing it away with a joke about Wall Street men being married to their jobs. But Emily didn't look convinced. Even her mother, who had always adored Alex, had started to sound different on the phone. You doing okay, sweetheart? You seem distracted, she said one night. Jenna blamed hormones. Tiredness. She blamed anything but the truth. But the signs were there. A growing emotional distance. A flicker of something else behind his smile. A tension that clung to the edges of their home like static in the air. Jenna tried to ignore it, willing everything to stay intact. After all, this was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. She never imagined that behind the walls of their picture-perfect home, her reality was slowly unraveling. Not in one loud crash, but in tiny, deliberate fractures, barely visible until it was too late. The late afternoon sun filtered through the living room window, casting long golden beams across the floor. Outside, the world was still, the kind of hush that only happens in the moments between seasons, when summer hasn't quite let go and autumn hasn't fully arrived. The trees stood motionless, their leaves heavy with the weight of humidity. Inside, the air was cool and quiet, broken only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Jenna was curled up on the couch, legs stretched out, one hand resting on her rounded belly as the baby shifted gently inside her. She had just finished folding a small pile of baby clothes, each one washed, dried, and neatly stacked on the coffee table. A light ache throbbed in her lower back, but she welcomed it. It reminded her that this was real. That her daughter was coming soon. That everything she had dreamed of was finally falling into place. Her eyes were beginning to drift closed when the sharp chime of the doorbell startled her upright. She blinked, heart skipping. It was unexpected. No text, no call, no scheduled delivery. Probably a package left at the door, she thought, slowly pushing herself to her feet with both hands. Her body felt heavy, but she moved with practiced grace, used to the weight of pregnancy now. She made her way across the living room, each step a soft thud against the hardwood floor, the air suddenly feeling cooler, sharper. The doorbell rang again, shorter this time, more insistent. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. And time stopped. Standing on the porch was a woman. Her expression was unreadable, caught somewhere between anger and sorrow. In one arm, she held a baby. In the other, a folder. And Jenna's world began to tilt. Jenna stared at the woman on the porch, her brain scrambling to connect the dots. Everything about the moment felt surreal, like her body was standing still, but her mind was spiraling at 100 miles per hour. The woman couldn't have been more than 30. Slim, well-dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, with her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. But it wasn't her appearance that had knocked the breath from Jenna's lungs. It was the baby. Nestled in the crook of the woman's arm was a tiny infant, no older than 4 or 5 months. Chubby cheeks, a shock of black hair, and soft brown eyes that blinked curiously in the sunlight. Jenna's gaze darted between the baby's face and the manila folder the woman was clutching in her free hand, and then up to the woman's expression, tight-lipped, tense, and full of something Jenna couldn't quite name. "Are you Jenna?" the woman asked again, voice flat. "Yes," Jenna managed to say, her voice catching in her throat. The woman took a step forward, then stopped, as if afraid to cross an invisible line. She exhaled deeply, as though she had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her head and still didn't know how to begin. "I'm sorry to do this," she said, shifting the baby slightly on her hip, "but you need to know the truth about Alex." The name hit Jenna like a slap. Her first instinct was to defend him. Alex. Her husband. No, this had to be some mistake. Some horrible misunderstanding. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. The woman hesitated, then extended the folder. "These are copies of messages. Emails. Bank statements. I didn't come here to hurt you, but I didn't know you existed until last week. I thought I was his only girlfriend. Until I found this address and saw your baby registry online." Jenna's hand flew to her belly, as if to protect her child from the words. "You're what?" she whispered. The woman's voice softened slightly. "I've been with Alex for almost 2 years. We met through work. I had no idea he was married. He told me he traveled a lot for clients, that he stayed with family in Ohio when he was away. I believed him. Why wouldn't I?" Jenna felt her knees buckle. She stumbled backward, catching the edge of the doorframe for support. The baby inside her kicked at the same moment, a sharp jab that reminded her she was still here, still breathing, still standing, even if everything else was collapsing. "You're lying," Jenna whispered, though she didn't believe it herself. "I'm not," the woman said gently, stepping no closer. "I found a photo of you two when I was going through his drawer. Wedding photo. I confronted him. He denied it, said you were a cousin. A friend. I didn't buy it. I dug deeper. That's how I found you." Tears welled in Jenna's eyes, hot and sudden. Her ears began to ring, her pulse pounding like a drumbeat. Every instinct told her to slam the door and run, to crawl back into bed and pretend this never happened. But the woman was still talking, her voice now trembling. "I didn't come to fight. I'm not here to defend him. I left him 2 days ago. I packed our things and walked out. You deserve to know. Especially now. She looked pointedly at Jenna's belly. I would have wanted to know, too. Jenna opened the folder with shaking hands. Printed screenshots, emails, pictures, selfies of Alex and this woman in restaurants, in hotel rooms, even at what looked like a family barbecue. There were birthday cards addressed to my love, receipts for gifts Jenna never received, payments from their joint account that suddenly made sense. A wave of nausea rolled through her. She gripped the edge of the door, struggling to breathe. Why now? She choked out. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're about to bring a life into the world, the woman said, her voice firm again. And because he's still lying to you. I don't know how many others there are. I only know I had to face the truth. And you do too. The baby in the woman's arms stirred, fussing quietly, unaware of the tidal wave he had helped unleash. For a long moment, Jenna said nothing. Her eyes stared through the woman, unfocused, as if looking into a future she couldn't yet comprehend. Her mind reeled with 1,000 questions, none of which made it past her lips. She wasn't sure how long she stood there, seconds, minutes, but eventually, her voice came, quiet and broken. Please leave. The woman nodded. She didn't argue. She turned and walked away down the front path, disappearing with the baby into the hazy sunlight like a ghost fading from view. Jenna stood frozen in the doorway, the folder clutched to her chest, her other hand pressed tightly over her unborn child. Inside her, something cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. But enough to know that life would never, ever be the same again. Jenna waited until sunset before calling him. She couldn't think. Couldn't eat. Could barely breathe. The folder sat untouched on the kitchen table, its contents spilling out slightly from the edge, taunting her with each glance. She'd tried to distract herself, washing dishes, pacing the hallway, folding and refolding baby blankets, but the storm was building. And when it finally broke, it did so with the quiet ring of her phone as she dialed his number. Alex answered on the third ring, sounding as casual as ever. Hey, babe. Just leaving the office. Want me to pick up anything? Jenna stared at the wall, bile rising in her throat. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Her hand trembled around the phone. Come home, she said flatly. There was a pause. Everything okay? Just come home. Now. When he walked through the door 30 minutes later, still in his crisp white shirt, tie loosened, she was already standing in the living room with the folder in her hands. Her face was pale. Her eyes bloodshot. Alex froze the second he saw it. She didn't speak. Just held it out. He didn't take it. Instead, he let out a shallow breath and dragged his hand down his face. Okay, let's talk about this. Talk. Her voice cracked on the word. You want to talk now? He took a cautious step forward. Jenna, listen, whatever she told you, it's not that simple. Oh, it's not. Her tone sharpened. Because from where I'm standing, it seems very simple. You cheated. You lied. You had a baby with another woman. While I've been here, pregnant with your child, you were building a second life somewhere else. He tried to reach for her. She stepped back. Don't, she whispered. Alex sighed and dropped his hand. Okay. Yes, I screwed up. But it wasn't serious. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Didn't mean. She laughed, bitter and wild. You accidentally had a child with someone else? You accidentally carried on a relationship for 2 years? Don't insult me. His expression shifted, hardened. Jenna, you don't understand what I've been dealing with. The pressure. The expectations. Work's been hell. I've been trying to hold it all together for us. For us. She nearly screamed. You destroyed us. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. Look, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose you. You're the one I built my future with. This, what we have, is real. I just made a mistake. No, she said quietly. Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk. You made choices. Repeatedly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence sat heavy between them, filled only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of Jenna's heart in her ears. Then, slowly, her body gave out. She sat down heavily on the arm of the couch, one hand clutching her belly, the other gripping the edge of the cushion to stay upright. The weight of the betrayal was more than emotional. It was physical. She could feel it pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Her baby kicked again, a small flutter like a question. What now, Mom? She thought she'd cry. But no tears came. Only a dull ache behind her eyes. Alex stood awkwardly a few feet away, still trying to read the situation, still believing, somehow, that he might salvage it. We can figure this out, he said. We can go to therapy. People work through worse things than this. She looked at him then. Really looked. And in that moment, it was like seeing a stranger in her living room. I don't even know who you are. Jenna. Pack your things. He blinked. What? You heard me. I want you out of this house by morning. The edge in her voice surprised even her. There was no yelling, no breakdown. Just a cold clarity she didn't know she possessed. He opened his mouth to argue but closed it again. Maybe he saw something in her eyes. Maybe, finally, he understood. I'll stay at a hotel, he muttered. Good. He walked upstairs in silence. Jenna sat there for what felt like hours after he left the room. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind refused to shut down. The physical toll was undeniable. Her blood pressure was up. Her sleep had been destroyed. And emotionally, she felt like she was floating above her own life, watching the wreckage from a distance. The next day, she called her OB/GYN, explained the stress she was under, and scheduled an appointment. The baby was okay, but she wasn't taking any chances. She needed to protect this child, if not from the world, then from the damage already done. 2 days later, Jenna met with a divorce attorney. There was no going back. No fixing this. Not now. Not ever. Her heart was broken. Her dreams shattered. But somewhere, buried under the grief, a small voice whispered, "You're still here. You're still standing." And that had to be enough. After the initial shock had somewhat settled and Alex was out of the house, Jenna found herself engulfed in a restless energy, a desperate need to understand just how deep the betrayal went. The woman on her doorstep had been just the beginning, a crack in the veneer that suddenly revealed a vast, crumbling foundation beneath. If Alex could keep one secret like this, what else was he hiding? She began by scrolling through their joint bank statements, a task she'd always found tedious before but now approached with fierce determination. The first few months looked normal enough: rent, utilities, groceries, the usual payments for baby supplies. But as she dug further, her eyes caught on a series of odd transactions: withdrawals to cash, payments to unfamiliar businesses, and charges at hotels and restaurants miles away from their home. Some were tagged with vague descriptors, others just initials. Jenna felt her chest tighten. It was more than just emotional betrayal. It was financial deception, evidence that Alex had been siphoning money, perhaps to support a life she knew nothing about. Her phone buzzed. A text from Emily popped up on the screen. "Are you okay? You've been quiet. Want to talk?" Jenna typed back a quick, shaky message. "I need to find out the rest." Fueled by a mixture of anger and fear, Jenna dove into Alex's digital life. She had always trusted him implicitly, never feeling the need to snoop on his phone or laptop. Now, she wished she'd been less naive. When she finally accessed his old laptop, left behind in their study, she found folders and emails hidden deep within, protected by passwords he'd forgotten to update. Among the files were messages to multiple women, some flirty, some explicitly intimate, others resembling entire online personas. One email in particular sent a chill down her spine. It was from a woman named Lisa, referencing a weekend getaway and keeping things quiet. Another conversation hinted at plans to move to another city, plans Jenna had no knowledge of. She realized with growing horror that the visitor at her door wasn't the first woman Alex had deceived. Nor was she the only secret. Alex had been leading a double life, living one version of himself with Jenna and another entirely different one in other cities, or at least online. Jenna sank back into the couch, her mind spinning. The man she had loved, married, and trusted was a stranger. The future she had imagined, the family dinners, the first steps, the whispered bedtime stories, was built on lies. Tears welled up again, but this time they were mingled with a fierce resolve. She had to know the full truth. For her baby. For herself. With trembling hands, Jenna began to draft an email to Alex's business contacts, quietly reaching out to anyone who might shed light on his whereabouts and secrets. The woman at the door had been the tip of the iceberg, and now Jenna was determined to dive deep beneath the surface. What she uncovered next would shake her to her core. In the days and weeks that followed, Jenna realized she couldn't face this storm alone. The weight of betrayal was heavy, but the support of those around her began to lighten the load. She reached out to her mother, whose steady presence became a lifeline, a calm harbor in the chaos. Late-night phone calls with her best friend Emily turned into therapy sessions of their own, filled with tears, laughter, and the kind of honesty only true friendship allows. Jenna also found strength in professional help. Therapy wasn't just a place to unpack her pain, it became a sanctuary where she learned to trust herself again. Her therapist gently reminded her that her instincts, the quiet warnings she'd almost ignored, were her greatest compass. "You knew," she said softly during one session. "You just needed permission to listen." With every appointment, Jenna began to reclaim pieces of herself that had been buried beneath doubt and heartbreak. She started journaling her journey, writing letters to her unborn child about courage, hope, and the importance of standing strong even when the world feels like it's falling apart. Her focus shifted to the baby growing inside her, the tiny life that was her future and her redemption. Preparing the nursery became an act of love and defiance, a promise that no matter what had happened, she would protect this new beginning. There were dark days, of course, when anger flared or loneliness crept in. But Jenna's resolve grew stronger. She realized that betrayal had shattered her past, but it did not have to define her future. One afternoon, sitting by the window with her hand resting on her belly, Jenna whispered to herself, "I trusted myself once. I'll do it again." That quiet declaration marked the start of healing, a path toward rebuilding her life on her own terms, grounded in self-trust and resilience. Jenna wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to thrive. The day Jenna went into labor dawned crisp and clear, a fresh beginning mirrored by the gentle morning light filtering through the hospital window. Though her body was weary from months of emotional turmoil, her spirit was unexpectedly calm, steady, like the steady beat of the new life she carried within her. Surrounded by her mother, Emily, and a small circle of friends who had stood by her side through every heartbreak and setback, Jenna felt a deep sense of gratitude. These were the people who truly saw her, who loved her not because of her circumstances but because of her strength and courage. Their quiet encouragement filled the room with warmth and hope. Hours later, Jenna's cries gave way to a first, piercing wail, a sound that filled the space with pure, unfiltered life. Her baby was born healthy, a perfect little miracle with bright eyes and soft skin. Holding her daughter for the first time, Jenna felt a rush of emotions she hadn't anticipated. Overwhelming love, fierce protection, and a fierce pride in her own resilience. In that moment, all the pain, betrayal, and loss seemed to fade into the background. The past was behind her now. The future stretched ahead, full of unknowns but also endless possibilities. Jenna whispered softly to her newborn, "This is your new beginning. And so is mine." She found within herself a strength she never knew existed, one born from survival, hope, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. It was a beginning not just of life, but of healing and renewal. Months had passed since that shattering day at the doorstep, and Jenna had spent every moment rebuilding her life and preparing to welcome her daughter into the world. Then, one afternoon, a message came from Alex. Quiet, tentative, but impossible to ignore. He wanted to meet his child. Jenna felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, doubt, but also a strange calm. She knew this meeting wasn't about forgiveness or rekindling what had been broken. It was about setting boundaries and claiming her peace. When they finally met, Jenna stood tall and steady. Alex arrived, nervous and unsure, but Jenna's gaze was unwavering. "This is my daughter," Jenna said, her voice soft but firm, as she cradled the tiny life he wanted to meet. Alex looked at the baby, then back at Jenna. "I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. I want to be part of her life." Jenna took a deep breath. "Thank you for showing me who you really are. But right now, what she needs most is stability and love. And that's what I'll give her." She made it clear that any future involvement would be on her terms and for her child's sake, not to mend their fractured marriage or undo the betrayal. Alex nodded, a mix of regret and acceptance in his eyes. As he left, Jenna felt a weight lift off her shoulders. This was closure, not reconciliation. She wasn't angry anymore. She was free. And with her daughter in her arms, Jenna was ready to write the next chapter of her life, one defined not by betrayal, but by strength, love, and hope. 1 year after the storm that upended her world, Jenna's life had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. The pain of betrayal was still a shadow in the corners of her heart, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it had forged a new version of herself, stronger, wiser, and fiercely independent. Jenna had full custody of her daughter, whom she named Grace, a symbol of the hope and renewal that blossomed even in the darkest soil. Co-parenting with Alex was a distant, complicated reality, one she navigated cautiously and only when necessary, always putting Grace's well-being first. Boundaries remained firm, but Jenna had found a peaceful acceptance that allowed her to focus on what truly mattered, raising her child in a loving, stable environment. Professionally, Jenna flourished. She returned to her career with renewed passion and drive, balancing work and motherhood with grace. The challenges she faced only sharpened her resilience, inspiring her to advocate for other women facing difficult relationships and betrayals. Her story became a beacon of hope, not just for survival but for thriving. Emotionally, Jenna had reached a place of profound strength. Therapy and support had helped her heal, but it was her own determination that carried her through. She learned to trust her instincts again, to set boundaries without guilt, and to embrace self-love as a radical act of courage. On quiet evenings, Jenna would often sit by the window, Grace nestled in her arms, and reflect on how far she'd come. The journey had been painful, but it was also a testament to the power of healing and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. Jenna's story is a reminder to all women facing betrayal and heartbreak. Sometimes the worst day of your life saves you. It breaks you open, shakes your soul, and forces you to rebuild, not who you were, but who you were always meant to be. Her life today is proof that from the ashes of despair, a new, brighter future can rise.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.